Like, I periodically check the internet for sports highlights, and there's usually something in Philadelphia going on. My mouth dropped when I saw this one last week, and I thought it had to be a joke. Offensive line coach Juan Castillo named defensive coordinator of the Eagles.
A stunning development.
2 weeks earlier, he interviewed for the offensive coordinator job for the Cleveland Browns, but he didn't get that. But we'll make him our defensive coordinator. Has Andy Reid lost his mind?
Well, you know what? I'm starting to wonder if the whole dynamic by which decisions get made in that organization has changed. I wonder if Andy has lost some of the hammer a little bit and the autonomy a little bit. I think it's very strange that there's some moves that they've made in this offseason already that have seemed kind of rash. And I mean, aren't you going to at least interview some of the guys on the Super Bowl staff before you make this decision?
Why not wait a week and interview them?
I mean, I don't know. It doesn't sound like Andy Reid to me. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I was sort of whatever about this Juan Castillo thing. And then the next day, the day after the announcement, I saw him on Daily News Live being interviewed. And I was really troubled by that because he was talking about, I'm going to get down with these guys and we're going to do drills and we're going to do fundamentals and we're going to do... Talking like a position coach who's going to coach at the micro level. You know what I mean? Really, like stand on the blocking sled with the guys and that kind of thing. That's not what we're looking for in a coordinator. A coordinator has to coordinate. A coordinator has to look at it from the kind of the macro level and the strategic level and the moving personnel around level. I didn't have nearly as much of a problem with this as you did until I saw that interview. And then I was like, oh my God, do they know what they're getting into here? It's easy to read too much into one interview, and we'll see. But it is, I think it's safe to say it's a strange move.
It's not been one interview. It's been several of them. And Mike Missinelli's been on different shows where the people are just like head scratching on his responses. They ask him about his scheme, and it's okay to say you're going to be aggressive and so forth. Yeah. But they want him to go a step further. What are you going to do? How are you going? And he starts talking about Rocky Balboa and the American dream.
Yeah. There's way too much of that stuff. You're right.
You're not trying to sell us on that. You've got the job. But he's replacing a guy who, in some ways, was over his head, Sean McDermott, who was also criticized for not making moves quick enough with personnel during games. So here's a guy who really doesn't have to. You leave a lineman in. In some cases, they left linemen in way too long.
Well, yeah. I mean,
that's not even his call sometimes.
I don't think it was his call a lot of the time. I think he was a guy who really drilled these guys on technique, on scheme, blocking, individual blocking schemes, and this is a much different thing. And I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm saying it's weird to think that he could do it.
You have to make split decisions with this and everything else. Now, here's the team that gave up 31 passing touchdowns last year in the red zone. So they haven't addressed the secondary. It would be smart if they hired a guy who maybe could do that, bring somebody from the outside in, okay? Makes no sense there. To me, this will be the defining moment for Andy Reid. If this doesn't work, he's gone.
Well, I mean, we are at the point now with Andy Reid where he's been there long enough, and he has made this transition from a veteran team to a young team. Now it's got to happen. I really think he is in next year, unless they come really close. I'd say conference championship game. Next year might be his last year, and certainly next year and the next will be the end of the road for him. And maybe that's fine. Maybe, how many people get 15 years in one job in the NFL? How many people in the history of the NFL have gotten that? Maybe, I'm not saying that's a horrible thing or an utter repudiation of Andy Reid, but I think the time is now. I think it really is. There's an urgency.
There is an urgency, but I think you said about it, it's less of a hammer. I think it's got more of a hammer. He's paranoid right now. He made this decision and kept people he knows close to him instead of bringing somebody from the outside.
Well, that's possible.
And a whole new system in there.
That's entirely possible.
And I think some of the coaches that were being interviewed or were candidates to be interviewed turned down interviews because they know he may not be there much longer.
Well, I don't know. Who knows? But I do think that there is the dynamic has changed with the Eagles, and it really is. There's urgency there that really hasn't ever been there before.
Clock's ticking.